My pro-Trump neighbor parked their motorcycle in front of my driveway, and is suing me for destroying it. Plus one update, my neighbor parked their motorcycle in front of my driveway, and is suing me for destroying it. So me and my husband just moved to a really nice part of town because my husband got a really good promotion that came with a huge salary increase. For context, we have 2 younger children and one of them is still an infant. The one that is still an infant has a rare lung condition that requires us to visit the hospital somewhat frequently, and on some occasions we have to make emergency trips to the hospital. Now here is where that gets relevant. The house that we just moved into is extremely luxurious. We have a very nice yard, basketball court, and pool. However, there is one issue. Our neighbors. They are the most classic pro-Trump, conservative family. Even despite having a huge driveway, they don't have space, because they have 2 monster trucks and 1 normal car, as well as a motorcycle. On the first day that we moved in, I didn't know it at the time, but their youngest son was just months away from his 16th birthday. I received a knock on the door and it was my neighbor, specifically the dad. We'll call him Dad. Dad, good evening, how are you? Me, we're okay. I'm sorry I can't open the door, but my youngest came home from school with a sore throat today and so I'm not sure what's going on with him. How are you and how can I help? Dad, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it isn't anything serious. We are okay. My son just turned 16 a few weeks ago and I'm sure you saw the new motorcycle we just bought him. Me, yes, I did. It's such a pretty big motorcycle. Does he like it? Dad, yes, he does. It's what he wanted so we got it for him. It is very big and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Me, I don't understand? Dad, we have been having complaints from some of the other neighbors that his motorcycle is so big that they can't get around it when they are driving through and we're afraid that it might get sideswiped if he continues to park it in the street. Me, yeah, I've had some intense moments trying to get around it myself, but I'm sure he will get better at parking as he gets more experienced. I'm not sure what this has to do with me, I haven't complained. Dad, oh, I know you haven't complained, which is why I was going to ask if he could use your driveway to park since you don't use it. Me, very stunned at this. I do use my driveway when I leave and come home. I can't get to my garage without using my driveway. Besides, I have issues with depth perception and your son's motorcycle is so big it will take up most of my driveway and I don't want to be responsible for any damage that might happen while it is on my property. Dad, well, we will make sure that he parks so that it will allow you to come and go without any issues. Me, that isn't possible. The only way he can park to allow me to get around him is if he parks halfway on my lawn and that wouldn't work because then he would damage my lawn. If you are concerned about his motorcycle getting damaged then why don't you let him park in your driveway and then one of your other smaller cars can park in the street. Dad, we've already discussed that and we would have to park 2 cars in the street in order for him to use the driveway. It would be very easy for him to park in your driveway and I can assure you that it will not be an inconvenience to you. You don't even use your driveway. Me, I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not going to be responsible for his vehicle on my property and I need to be able to come and go without worrying about someone else's property. Dad, very upset at this point, you are not being very neighborly. I thought you were a nice woman. You don't use your driveway and this would benefit the whole neighborhood. Me, losing my temper at this point. Listen, I told you no and I do use my driveway every time I pull into my garage and every time I leave. I'm sorry you don't have enough parking for all your vehicles. I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's not my problem that you decided to buy a vehicle that didn't fit your property. Now, while I also find it irritating to try to navigate the road with that motorcycle in the way, it is public parking and so I deal with it. I will not have anyone else's vehicle parking on my property. Now, if you don't mind, I have a sick kid and need to get back to him. Have a good day. With that, I closed the door and then looked out the peephole and saw him give me the bird before he turned to leave. I just shook my head and had to take a moment to understand that I actually just had that conversation. I then loaded my son up in the car and left to take him to minor emergency to get him checked out. All tests came back negative and I was told he probably had a run-of-the-mill virus and to keep him home and do self-care. Was told to bring him in if he got worse but not to worry. I went to work the next day and told my coworkers the story of my neighbor's request and they were shocked. I had one coworker suggest that I send an email to my homeowners to explain what happened just to get it on record because it was such an odd request. I took her advice and typed up an email that day when I was at lunch and sent it. For those who want to know, it was just an FYI email, not a complaint email. It basically stated that my neighbor made a request to park on my property and when I declined, he got mad at me and I wanted it on record just in case anything ever happens. So very glad I did. So, Friday comes and my youngest son has been homesick since Tuesday afternoon. When I got home Friday evening, I checked him and he had begun to run a fever and was complaining of several other things. I had been doing self-care with him since Tuesday and he didn't appear to be getting any better, and started swelling up. The doctors informed us if this happened then we needed to take our son to the emergency room. So, I decided to take him back to emergency and loaded him up in the car. I opened my garage door and I was absolutely shocked to see that very big Ducati sitting in my driveway, blocking me. I can't describe to you how angry I was to see that vehicle sitting there. Now before anyone starts asking me how I didn't know it was in my driveway, it's because my street is very busy and cars are coming and going all the time and unless someone knocks on my door, I don't bother watching every vehicle that drives up and down the street. The only window that can see my driveway are the ones in my kitchen and I keep those curtains drawn and never look out of them. So, I get out of my car and stomp over to my neighbor's house and bang on their door. The mother of the house answers the door and this is the conversation. Mom, irritated and kind of angry. Can I help you? You are interrupting our dinner. Me, your son is parked in my driveway after I told your husband he couldn't. I need to take my son to minor emergency and that motorcycle is blocking me in. It's at this time that Dad walks up behind Mom and proceeds to talk. Dad, he isn't blocking you in, you can get around him. Me, no I can't. You need to move that motorcycle or I'm going to call the police and a tow truck. I need to get my son in to see a doctor. Dad, Turning to call for his son and then turning back to me, he's not blocking you but I will have him move it. Me, it doesn't matter whether you believe he is blocking me in or not. He is not allowed to park in my driveway. No one is allowed to park in my driveway, and if I find an unauthorized vehicle parked in my driveway again, I'm not going to bother to knock on your door, I'm going to have it towed. It was at this time I saw the son arrive at the door with his keys in his hands, and I turned to leave and head to my car to wait for him to move it, and I heard him call me that famous B word every woman has heard at least once in her life. I ignored him and headed to my car and watched as he got in, and after some effort finally was able to back out of my driveway and parked his motorcycle in the street a little way down the road. I was able to leave and take my son to the emergency room. But what my neighbors did next infuriated me to a point where I knew I had to do something. I would make sure that they would regret their actions. Update 1: After my neighbor decided to repeatedly park their new motorcycle in my driveway, I complained to them. However, they did it once more, and it was even worse that I was trying to rush my son to the ER. I told them that if I ever saw their motorcycle in my driveway that there would be consequences. I took my son to the ER, and luckily the doctors were able to get his condition back to normal. It was an excruciatingly long time at the hospital. I was there waiting for 7 hours, and it was already 3 a.m. As I was heading back I hadn't checked my phone, but a couple hours earlier my husband texted me that the neighbors had parked their motorcycle back in our driveway, and I swore to God that if I came home at 3 a.m. and saw that motorcycle in my driveway, I would wreck it with a hammer. Not surprisingly it was there, and I immediately went inside and got a huge sledgehammer from our garage. Despite the siren going off like crazy, I continued smashing that motorcycle until it was beyond repairable. At 6 a.m. I woke up to someone banging loudly and rapidly on my door. I didn't have to look to know who it was. The neighbors got furious and called the cops on me for breaking their motorcycle. I opened the door and had the following conversation. Police officer: Good morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you, but we had a report from your neighbor. He is stating that you wrecked his son's motorcycle by having it towed from the street, and we need to talk to you about this issue. Me: Good morning, officer. My neighbor is only telling you half the story. I had his motorcycle destroyed this morning from my driveway when I returned home from a minor emergency. I couldn't get into my driveway, and I have already told him twice that he and his family can't park on my property. Police officer: So, you are saying that the motorcycle in question was on your property without your permission and that you had it destroyed? Me: Yes. Last Tuesday he asked if I would allow his son to park in my driveway. I told him no, and he got mad at me and flipped me off before leaving. Then Friday evening, when I was leaving, I discovered his son had parked in my driveway and I couldn't leave my garage. I went over and demanded they remove the vehicle, and I told them at that time that I would have the motorcycle towed if they parked on my property again. I came home late this morning and the motorcycle was in my driveway, so I had it destroyed. Police officer: I just want to confirm, you are saying that it wasn't parked on the street but in your driveway, and you have proof of this? Me: Yes, sir. After that the police officers had me sign a report and then were on their way. My neighbors are yapping about trying to sue my family and I, but I don't have the will to deal with them considering they have no grounds